Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Brian David from Virtual Building Studio, where I lead our webinar and partnership initiatives. We collaborate with industry experts to bring, just a second, guys. So I'll continue. So we collaborate with industry experts to bring practical real-world insights to architects, engineers, and construction professionals. At VBS, our ScantoBIM division focuses on converting point cloud data into highly accurate BIM models. This helps team improve coordination, reduce rework, and make more informed decisions based on actual site conditions. The webinars at VBS are designed for architects, engineers, construction professionals, project managers, and anyone involved in BIM, 3D scanning, or facility management. Today's session is titled Scanning Existing Conditions to Improve as Built Model and Verify Design Intent. This session is really about how teams are using scanning, not just to capture reality, but to actively reduce gaps and make better decisions throughout the project lifecycle. If you look at most construction challenges today, they don't come from a lack of data. They come from gaps between what exists on the site, what's designed, and what actually gets built. Before we start with anything further, I'd like to we encourage this session to be interactive. There will be a dedicated Q&A session at the end, so feel free to share your questions in the chat throughout the webinar. Now, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have Ben and Owen with us today. Ben brings deep hands-on experience in applying laser scanning and reality capture directly on live construction projects. His work focuses on ensuring these workflows reduce risk, improve coordination, and deliver measurable value on site. Owen leads BIM and VDC and brings a strong cross-disciplinary perspective across architecture, virtual design, and field execution. His work focuses on bridging the gap between design intent and what actually gets delivered in the field. We at VBS are glad to have both of you with us today. I'd like Ben to take over and share the screen from there then. Thank you.
For the intro, let me share my screen really quick here so we can start the presentation. Okay, everyone should be able to see my screen now. Can you confirm that, Brian or Owen?
Yes, we can.
All right, cool. Well, thanks for the intro. Yeah, like he said, we're going to be talking about how laser scanning is used to scan existing conditions and to improve our as-built models, create as-built models, verify design intent, work with design teams, and we will be going over all of that. So why isn't this changing the slide? There we go. So my name is Ben Stocker. I'm the Senior Construction Technologist at Skender. I'm basically in charge of the R&D and then implementation of any new technology that helps out our project teams. I've been in the construction industry for 16 years now, and 11 of those have been at Skender. But I work with a lot of reality capture technologies and then just help improve any workflows that help out our project teams. So yeah, that's me. And Owen?
I'm Owen Heisinger. I am Skender's Senior VDC Manager. It's really my job to work on the coordination end, both in design phase as well as in construction. I work closely with Ben and with our project teams to actually use that data that he's capturing to actually inform the design and inform the construction. Once upon a time, I started my career in architecture. And after a number of years working on the design side, changed over, started working on the construction side purely in VDC. I've been with Skender for about a year now.
And then, so just a brief little intro who Skender is. So Skender is a general contractor based in Chicago. And we work in a bunch of different markets, from tenant interiors to healthcare, multifamily housing, hospitals, lab sciences, retail spaces, senior living facilities, affordable housing. So we do a lot of different building types. And one one thing that's in common that you'll see in a lot of these examples that we're going to show is a lot of these spaces we're working in are old buildings that have outdated or non-existent design or drawings or anything. So that's where these scanning existing conditions come into a big play here. So we have a few poll questions here. So first poll question, Brian, I don't know if you have to push it to everyone or if everyone can just go over to the poll. Here we go. I think it should have popped up now. So yeah, we just want to get a vibe, a check and see what is your experience with laser scanning. Have you never used scanning before and you're interested to hear about it for the first time here? You've used it once or twice, or you're very experienced with scanning? See a lot of very experienced so far, so that's great. Hopefully those people still learn a few tips in this. I see some good new use cases. We'll let that go just for a tiny bit more. I don't know if everyone else can see the percentages live, but we're at 62% of the voters are at very experienced right now. So that's good to see. Okay, yeah, so 18% each for never used it and used it once or twice, and then 62% at very experienced. So I'm hoping that all those newer people learn some great things here, and then even for the very experienced people, hopefully you learn at least one tip or something. And we're going to be going over different scanning deliverable options and what types of use cases you'd want to use those into. And all of the examples we're going to show here are not theoretical or anything. These are all real examples from our jobs. Most of them are very recent ones from within just the past few months or something too. I like to, whenever I'm showing examples, I like to keep it as real and grounded as possible and not just talk theoretically about things. So these are all real examples we're showing. So our scanning options here, all the examples will fall into one of these three buckets here. So a terrestrial scanner, those have been around the longest. To scan around a tripod, from these, you're going to get the best accuracy, but it's also the slowest capture. You'll see in these examples here, that's when we just need the highest point density, the cleanest point clouds for catching really skinny objects and stuff. Yeah, and then SLAM scanners are newer to the market, and for the longest time, in my opinion, they were interesting and fun, but like the result was not up to par. I didn't really like the results that much, but in the past handful of years, they've really started to get a lot better. And SLAM scanners can really be used in a lot of use cases where you want to just be able to capture a space very quickly. Maybe it's because you don't have the time, enough time to capture in the space, or it's just like there's work going on that you can't just stand around and be in the way of. So yeah, we'll go over some SLAM examples, and then the new kid on the block, 3D Gaussian splats. Not directly from a scanner or from a point cloud, but the point cloud can be used in it. So that's going to give you the best visual quality, and we'll talk about when that can be used as a supplemental deliverable or when it can be used as the primary deliverable too. So first, yeah, we're going to start with some examples of the terrestrial scanner, and Owen's going to kick it off here with window rough openings.
Yeah, so you're going to notice many of our examples today. You're going to notice a kind of a common theme. Our general QA/QC approach is centered around providing information when it's most valuable to the project. That's going to be fast and early. Providing early means that our teams can better plan the work, or in the case of this example, reduce the risk around rework. Measure twice, cut once. Windows are manufactured, so we're looking at the rough openings for here. Windows are manufactured off-site, often months in advance of installation. They are built to a specific size and meant to be placed into a specific rough opening size in the wall. With tolerances ranging around ½ an inch, give or take, terrestrial scanning really is the only option in this case. Anything outside of that general tolerance just isn't going to be good enough to capture the information that we need. Now, on this building, you can see it's much higher building, much taller building. It's actually a 32-story multifamily high-rise, but we're really limiting our area to capture to that bottom 4 stories. We do this on our projects, kind of topping off at around that 5-story, and that's primarily due to just the angle of approach that we can get onto that facade. So when you're capturing it, closer to the building, you're looking more up at an acute angle. And the more acute that you're looking, you're really not covering that surface with as many points as you could if you were looking more straight on. So in this project, we captured all the points from across the street, limiting the height, and we were able to get a very clean point cloud. Then you can jump to the next. Once we have that scan completed and pulled in, we can start to analyze those rough opening sizes. So what you're looking at here is kind of a manual review, tracing out where and how large those rough opening sizes are. And we can start to compare those dimensions against the approved shop drawings. For the most part on this project, our mason had done a wonderful job. We were all within kind of 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch on the overall rough opening sizes. However, we did find at one instance that there was, in fact, a window that was placed about half a full block off. That's about 8 inches. So our first scan we had completed was actually limited to that level 2, to the area that's marked up in red. We were able to capture and identify that issue early, within about a day of it being installed, and 4 hours later, that was actually fixed. The benefit of this is that all the future floors, levels 3 and 4, were able to be installed correctly the first time. Now, the whole point of this is kind of tracking as close as possible to when it was actually installed, but really before any future work is added on top. And that will decrease the likelihood of future rework.
Moving on then to another use case here for terrestrial scanners is floor flatness or levelness analysis. I mentioned that we work in a lot of existing buildings too. So a lot of these buildings that we'll go into, they have had multiple offices built in there previously. So this space has been rebuilt, and there's just layers upon layers on the floor. Tons of things have happened, and we need to figure out what is going on with this floor, because there might be critical things like a long office front with a bunch of glass partitions on it, or maybe when we're working in hospitals, there might be an MRI machine or other sensitive equipment that has to be very, very level. So doing these floor analyses are extremely important for us, so that we can figure out where we need to level, where it's important to. It also just gives us a more accurate bid for the job when during pre-construction. So we will take these and share them with our subcontractors too, so that they can then, instead of just giving us a rough estimate of how much floor prep is going to need to be done, we can know exact values now. And instead of looking like a rounded number guess on our bid, it can be a nice, more accurate value. So yeah, this is used on a lot of our projects. This is actually probably one of our biggest uses of laser scanning. We use this on the most number of jobs, I would say. Yeah, and you can see here on this deliverable, you can tell even from a distance, without zooming into this image or anything, you can tell exactly where the high and low spots are just from the heat map on here. But then, like normally when we would have a surveyor come in, they would usually do at most like a 10-foot by 10-foot grid of points along or around the floor, showing elevation deviations at that spot from a determined benchmark. So here in this particular case, this was a 5-foot by 5-foot grid on here. So we have that colorful heat map that you can see what's going on. We have the grid, and then also have the floor plan of the space overlaid too. So it makes it very easy to see where like those office fronts are that I was talking about. You can see like right above the core of the building here, there's a big run of offices that I'm assuming those are probably all glass office fronts, and that needs to be very level there. So yeah, it's really critical to have a floor analysis like this. This is a great example of when this is especially helpful. That previous one I showed you was not that bad, actually. You saw lots of colors because it was a relatively small range that we were actually analyzing. But in other cases, it is really critical to do this. This is a recent job here that's actually still ongoing. And This is the worst building I've ever scanned. There was a 13-inch difference on the high and low point of this floor, which is about 33 centimeters, I believe. And the team really needed to know what was going on with this floor, because we were not only applying just a little bit of floor leveling, there's actually a layer of structural foam on the floor and then a layer of concrete on top of that. But we needed to know exactly what this floor was doing, so we knew exactly how much foam we were going to need and where. And yeah, it was a whole big deal here. And this is just a perfect use case for these terrestrial scanners, because you are just going to get the best accuracy, the cleanest point clouds out of it. It's really, really helpful for these types of jobs. And then, yeah, going into the next example, talking about the same job, though. I'll let Owen continue here.
Yeah, so the original reason for that we executed that scan was actually for the floor analysis. But quickly, when we realized just how far off some of the existing conditions were, you can see in this little video fly through, I'm looking at some of the columns and how it relates to the future design. As soon as we realized how far off that they were, we wanted to get ahead of that. Interior fit-out projects are extremely fast-paced, and they often require much greater level of engagement, particularly on-site engagement from our architect. Usually when an issue is identified, it's identified kind of late in the overall process when compared to a ground-up job. And that really limits the opportunity and kind of the time for anybody to respond. So by us taking this point cloud and getting a true, accurate depiction of what that space is and comparing it against the model, while we're wrapping up demo, while we're fixing the kind of raising the level of that floor, we're able to give additional time to both the architect and the owner to say, hey, we found these items, we found these issues, and now you have a little bit more time than normal to actually address them. Now they could address them with that might be aesthetic, or they might address it with, hey, what's the most cost-effective option? Jump to the next one. Now, usually on a project, we'll have the surveyor come in and tell us where the column lines are. On this project, with the floor being off by 13 inches, well, some of the exterior walls were off by approximately that same amount. Both on the north, or I guess on the north side, if you can look closely, we have three different color kind of models or drawings going on here. One we have in dark red. Those are all our surveyors' points, the active points that they placed on the ground. In black, that's the architectural Revit model. And then in blue is our point cloud, just for clarity. There are very distinct differences, particularly on that north side of that north wall, between existing conditions where the architect had it and where it actually is. You can actually look down that center wall too, running north-south. The whole building actually kind of bowed, like a banana shape a little bit, as you moved all the way across. Now, this had a real impact on some of the interior architectural elements. Columns were moved and placed directly into corridors where we had required egress clearances. And none of this would have been known, I guess, eventually would have been known. But we were able to identify this early on and actually address, like I said, some of the architectural design itself to actually take into account some of these existing conditions. Now, on this project, like I said, we had started with the terrestrial scanner to actually capture this space. On future projects, think post-demo, we're really going to be moving on and using more of the SLAM scanner. And that's going to be because, like I said, a lot of these interior fit-out projects are super fast-paced. You're still making decisions on site. And with the SLAM scanner, close enough as an accuracy is going to be actually all that we need.
Before we go into some of these SLAM examples, though, we have a poll question 2 here. Brian, if you want to start that second poll question. Yeah, so how are you using the scans today? This is a multiple choice, choose all that apply. So are you doing it for full scan to BIM, just existing conditions, progress documentation, quality control checks, or My favorite one in here is we scan, but we don't know what to do with the point cloud. Because everyone starts there at some point. Wow, vast majority existing conditions documentation so far. So very applicable to what we're talking about then. Great. Yeah, we could probably, they're still slowly coming in, but we're at 75% for existing conditions documentation. So that's great to see. Very applicable today then. Last scan to BIM. Great. All right. I think we can move on then here. So capturing with, oh no, this is still Owen. Owen, take it away.
Yeah. So for the SLAM scanner, like I said, when accuracy isn't the absolute paramount, I mean, we're still talking, plus or minus an inch, half an inch to an inch. It's not that eighth of an inch that you're going to end up getting with the terrestrial scanners, but the big advantage is speed. So on this project that I'll be talking through now, this is an active hospital project where we were going to be replacing a CT machine on the floor above. That would come with a number of different requirements. We were adding in, you can kind of see it in the colored image in dark red. You can see we were adding in some additional steel, and that steel was going to have to go in and around all of the existing MEP systems. Now, in the lower left, you can see what the scan originally looked like. This was captured at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Ben had to wake up nice and early for that, and had a very limited window from which to capture. We had a couple of ladders with us, and ceiling tiles were removed strategically so that we can actually get in and up into that ceiling. But for those of you who are very experienced with scans, you may know for what I call whack-a-mole, scanning above a ceiling is typically a bit lacking. You can't get in and around every piece of equipment, every piece of pipe, every duct. So you're left kind of filling in the gaps in between what's missing or kind of covered in shadow in the point cloud. So what we did is after that space was captured, came back and strategically modeled, didn't model every little bit and piece, but strategically modeled a lot of the mechanical systems up above the ceiling. Now this allowed us to, if you can look at some of those orange elements, place a couple of junction boxes here and there, and boom, now we could tell, oh, that's conduit, not pipe. We started to color code some of these elements to help our construction team and our trade contractors understand the scope and understand what was actually up above. Now this project was originally scheduled to come in at about 6 weeks, and with some of this early construction planning, we're actually able to cut that down to a 4-week schedule purely based on the fact that we had actually started to plan early. Go ahead and jump to the next slide. To help plan on these projects, a big part of what we're doing here is actually developing out our own set of drawings and visualizations. So you can see here on the right, similar to how our architects and our trade contractors are developing their design drawings or their shop drawings, we're using the same exact modeling tools in conjunction with the point cloud, keeping it turned on to help plan the work itself. And as I said, we were able to identify or cut out about 2 weeks. Now, the biggest reason for that is, if you can see the dark red pieces of steel again, originally it was expected that those pieces of steel were going to land inside of an existing partition wall. And it was also going to interfere with the existing light blue and green ductwork and equipment. What we found is we actually had just enough room to fit those pieces of steel up and in and around those elements without having to cut and remove those elements.
Anything else you wanted to say from that example, Owen?
No, I think we're good on that.
All right. So continuing on then with the SLAM use cases, this was another project where it's a new multifamily housing building that's going up right next to an existing building. There is very, very minimal space between that existing building. And what the team has wanted to do a couple times throughout this project is just monitor the spacing between our building and that neighbor's building, which you can kind of see in the video here. I'm just kind of zooming around and showing that gap there between the neighbor's building. This was a perfect use for a slam scan. We didn't need that, millimeter accuracy or anything. We just need a general progress capture. So this was a perfect use case here. This would have taken, we had to scan 3 floors of this building with the surrounding area a little bit. I don't know, it would have taken a few hours or something to do with a terrestrial scanner probably. And if I remember correctly, this was probably scanned in about 10 minutes, maybe 10 or 15 minutes using a SLAM scanner. So to be able to get that good enough data really, really quickly is fantastic, especially when you want to just do like a quick little progress quality check like this. Yeah, your point cloud is going to be slightly noisier, a little less defined, but in a lot of cases, that's okay. You can still work with that. You're still going to get the information you need. Now, one of the points I have here, though, the bullet points on this slide, is the potential for drift, and that is a concern with any SLAM scanner. So your walk path does matter a lot, getting good overlap and everything. But what you can do to help minimize that is, and this applies to any scanning, honestly, is tying into survey control. So on this one, because I was going up 3 floors and over a wider area, I wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have any drift or tilt problems or anything like that. So I just shot in some survey control points around the sides of the space so that it would be locked into that and be just a tighter point cloud that's going to be more accurate to the space, where I don't have to worry about those potential issues with SLAM scanners sometimes. I don't know if it would have happened with this. It probably would have been okay, but it's just the kind of thing where it's just better to be safe. But yeah, so that was a great use for a SLAM scanner for this. But I mean, I don't have a particular slide for it, but in all of the existing conditions, Owen talked about that other project, but a lot of our jobs now, we're just going in with this SLAM scanner too, just so that we can capture those existing conditions really quickly if we do need to refer to it later for whatever reason, taking that point cloud and compare it to a design drawings or model. It's really beneficial for just quick get in, get out scans that are good enough. And then while I was, I guess before that poll actually comes up, oh shoot, it already went to the next one. Go backwards, not forwards. While I was on site doing this particular scan, the project engineer on site said, oh, while we're scanning with this, can we also get the splat from this too, so that we can use that for visual reference? And I'm talking about 3D Gaussian splatting. So the next poll question then, Brian, if you want to start that, I think it's already up. Yes. So have you ever even heard of the term 3D Gaussian splat? We're at majority no right now, which is actually very exciting for me because I love showing these off and talking about them. This is technically different from a point cloud that we've been talking about previously here, but it ties in with this whole scanning for existing conditions for design conversation that we're having. All right, we're at majority. We're at 54% no right now, so this is great. I'm not going to go into the exact science of what 3D Gaussian splat is, but the elevator pitch is you start with a similar process as photogrammetry, actually doing structure for motion from images, and there's going to be a sparse point cloud behind this. So there is technically a sparse point cloud behind this visualization that you're seeing right now, and then there are 3D ellipsoidal blobs at each of those points. And when you have millions of those meshed together, you just have a very, very realistic looking visualization like this that can still be scaled and measurable and everything. And these work sometimes as just a great supplemental deliverable to the scan that we're already doing. And then in other cases, this is the main deliverable that we'll use, whether that's for progress documentation or to help with the design team. So as I mentioned, though, on this job, we were out there scanning to capture the point cloud so that we could take our measurements between the neighboring building and ours. But then the project engineer was like, oh, we could also process a splat for this too. So we can just easily fly around and visually look at this or just have this as a record. Because these are also a lot easier for people to work with than point clouds. A lot of times the average person isn't going to have either the software or the computing power to open up a point cloud, where these are very lightweight and can be just viewed in a browser by anyone. So yeah, as you can see, it's visually superior to any point cloud you've seen. In this case, we used it as a supplemental deliverable, but it's just a great visual reference for the project team and the design team here, just to make sure that they are keeping the distance that they need from our neighboring building. And then moving on to this next example here. This is one of my favorite stories or use cases with this. So this was a mechanical room that we were going to be scanning, and the design team wanted to get a point cloud for this so that they could compare it against their drawings and model, because they were going to be doing some renovations in this mechanical room. They were, I believe that they were going to be replacing some of the equipment, bringing new equipment in, and they just need to see what's going on in this mechanical room. What kind of space do we have going down these hallways? After we remove this equipment, how much space do we have in there? Things like that. So we scanned the entire space using a SLAM scanner. And then after working with the design team, we showed them how they can utilize this point cloud and everything. Then at the end of this meeting, I was like, hey, by the way, just for fun, I also processed the splat of the entire space. And they had not heard of that at the time. So flew them around in here, showed them the space, showed how they can take rough measurements in it. And they were like, this is incredible, because they loved the visual quality of this, especially in something like a dense mechanical room. With point clouds, they tend to start to look a little messy, especially if you try to do a terrestrial scanner in here. You would have to do so many scan setups, or else you're going to have a bunch of, point shadows everywhere because you're not capturing it from every angle. But even SLAM scanners, it's just so dense in here that it's going to start to look a little messy. So in this case, the design team was like, this splat is perfect. Like, we don't even need to use the point cloud anymore at this stage of design. Like, this is good enough for us. We can visually see everything. We're able to take the measurements that we need to the accuracy that is okay at this stage. And yeah, they were able to use this as their primary deliverable. I will admit, like, that's not the case in all the time. Most of the time, the splat for us is used as a supplemental deliverable to the point cloud or to the model or whatever else we're creating. But even if it is just a supplemental deliverable, it's really nice to have this to reference, just because everything is going to look so much better. If maybe you're looking at the point cloud and you're like, okay, what actually is this over here? What's going on? There's too many conduits too close to each other, and it's hard to tell which one is which. You can open up the splat then as well and just get that better visual reference. But in this case, it was fantastic because it just minimized trips needed to take to the site. This was in a more secure area too, so it'd be harder just to get access frequently for the design team to get in here. It just was very, very beneficial, and helped them out a lot. And then that's actually all of the content we had going through there. I feel like I briefed and rushed through it too much, but yeah, so that's just kind of an overview of like those three different methods of capturing and scanning, and then how we're using it on job sites. It really comes down to, like, choosing the right one. It comes down to what's the end goal? What's the deliverable you're trying to get from this? Do you need the most accuracy and the cleanest point cloud? Do you just need to get in and capture quickly? Or is visual quality the most important for you? But it all depends on what the project team needs, what your client needs. But they're all very, very helpful to these projects, especially in existing conditions.
Yeah, and I think to that last point you made, that having that conversation with your team and really trying to understand what it is that they really need, Because they may assume, oh, we need the point cloud, we need this. But as Ben said, particularly on that last example, once we actually had that discussion and talked through it more and showed what options there were, the deliverable changed drastically on what they were actually going to use and when they needed it.
This is a real story. This just happened last week. I had an architect say that they wanted something on this job site, and I thought it was overkill, if I'm being honest. And then, or like, I could tell they didn't know exactly what they wanted. They just needed to capture the space. It's an old historic hotel, and I could tell they didn't know exactly what they wanted, but they just wanted some type of capture and 3D documentation of sites. So I had a meeting with them and went over kind of a lot of the stuff that we just did now, and with a few more options like basic 360 photos and things like that. And yeah, it's just talking through each one. Okay, this one's going to take this long, and this one's going to take this long, and this one you'll get better accuracy from. And we went through all these different options, but just being transparent about all these different capture options with the end user is really important, because it can save you time too, just on capturing time, and then it also just gets them exactly what they want. Another point I want to make that I realized a little too late, that we didn't actually even show an example of any full scan to BIM process. we do that as well. It's just ironic since this is hosted by Scan to BIM. But that is definitely also another use case that's frequently done, especially on like our larger projects where we're trying to create a more accurate model of the space. So like Owen showed some examples where we are selectively modeling certain areas, but then there are definitely projects too where we are doing an accurate, a lot of times terrestrial scan of the whole building to be as clean as possible, and then creating a fresh BIM model of that building and using that as the base model instead of the one provided by the design team initially, because we knew that there were deviations from that design model. So we will do a full scan to BIM process so we have a more accurate base building model to work with that all the contractors can utilize then. I think that's everything we have, unless Owen, you had any other comments that you want to close with?
Nope. Seen a couple questions start to come in a little bit.
Yes, so there are two questions that have come up. I've assigned Ben on those questions. So as and when, if you want to take it up right now, or if you want to take it offline, you can get back to the audience on this on those particular questions.
Yeah, I could. I mean, we have time. We could take them. We'll just do them right now.
Great.
Yeah. So the first question I see here is, what software do you use and trust for the splat? I could do an entire. We could have an entire session just on that. The examples that you just saw in here, that was from XGrids. Those were with the XGrids L2 Pro scanner, and then processed in their proprietary software called Elixir CyberColor. So when I mentioned how we were able to do this slam capture, and then the project engineer said, oh, hey, you can also get the splat from this. That's why with their scanner, it does make it easy to get the point cloud and the splat all from one single capture. There are a lot of different ways to create a splat, though. It doesn't have to be from a proprietary scanner. You can just use your phone and take some pictures and process those if you really wanted to as well. It's really just image based. So yeah, for us, what we use is XGrids when we're doing any on the ground scanning like that. If we're capturing from a drone for splats, then there are other softwares that we will use. And then, I don't know, if you really want to get nerdy and start messing with it yourself, my favorite offline solution right now is called Lichtfeld Studio, and that's all local processing. But yes, the examples that you saw, that was from XGrids. And then the other question on here, let's see, how do you currently share and collaborate with the different types of scans across the organization? Is there a difference in the process for point cloud versus 3D GS, et cetera? Yes, that's a great question. So how do we share and collaborate with different types of scans? With the point clouds, what we see what I see most of the time is that people don't want the point cloud itself. They want the deliverable or the information that we can get from the point cloud. So it's going to be me or Owen scanning and analyzing this and coming up with that deliverable that, like you saw the screenshots from, that Owen created, or like the floor analysis that I created. Like that floor analysis is just sent over as a PDF. That's the final deliverable for that. And then I'm pretty sure Owen did the same when he does his rough opening checks and stuff. It's all, you know, analyzed in Revit and stuff, but then just PDF a nice deliverable to send over to them. But yeah, so most people don't need that point cloud. If you're sharing it with design teams, yes, they'll want that raw point cloud, and that's usually just sending over a shared link so that they can download that and bring it into their own Revit file or whatever.
Yeah,
and
I'll jump in for just a second. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
when it really starts to, you know, take into account where you're actually sharing the point cloud itself. When it comes to either the design side, you know, they need that background, or call it the MEP coordination end. So sharing those large files can be somewhat difficult at times for certain people's softwares or computers, that they may not be able to handle, let's say, a full scan. So sometimes those scans need to be broken up into zones and shared as separate files. But anytime that we're sharing that information, it's really about alignment to origin and alignment to the model. So that's where we end up having to spend a lot of time on the back end, is getting those two to live together in the same spot. The architect's Revit model does not align to necessarily control the same way that, let's say, CAD or real world coordinates are. Revit really likes to be close to that 000 origin, not 3 million feet away from it. Revit will yell and scream at you and just quit. So getting those things to align, whether it be kind of a manual offset with a set of, you know, manual overrides, let's say a Navis, or actually overriding those coordinates inside for us, usually Ferrocene, and then exporting so that when our architect or our trade contractors just hit, you know, link or append, boom, it pops in the right spot. They have nothing to think about. It's just in the correct location.
To handle the second half of that question, though, for sharing the 3DGS being the Gaussian splats, we always keep that web-based. So whether it's processed offline or processed in the cloud, I always want to keep it web-based for sharing it then, so that it's easily accessible by as many people as possible. So if it's processed through Xgrids, you can publish it and share a web link that's easily shareable. If I'm processing it locally or elsewhere, I like to use a different viewer. Supersplat is a popular one where you can upload your own splat, and then they have a really good viewer for that. So that's the other half of that question there. Another question that popped up here was, what software to use for storage and file sharing? Here at Skender, we use Ignite to store our stuff. That just makes it easy to share amongst teams and stuff. I'm not sure if there's more of an answer to that. Makes it easy to share links to outside people. If it's a large download, we just already have it in Ignite, can just send a share link very easily. Are there any other questions then?
I don't see any other questions coming up. I believe you explained the entire webinar in a very structured way. I also believe this actually concludes our today's webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for the great questions. Then Ben and Owen, I really appreciate you for sharing such practical and valuable insights today. For the audience, we'll be sharing the recording along with the key takeaways shortly once we are done with this webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for joining the webinar, and have a great day ahead. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Owen. Just glad to have
Thank you. And just a quick note, actually,
Sure.
before we shut it off. Are people are able to still submit more questions or something, right, on the LinkedIn event, and then we could answer later if they come up with it later?
If we receive any questions, we'll definitely share it across with you. And right, that's it. And if you have any other further questions around this, we can definitely get on email and we can discuss further on this. Open for
That's
that.
great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, guys, and thanks for joining in.
Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.